Hey guys, here is the second set of videos. Today we're talking about Unit 1, Lesson 4, writing equations of piecewise functions. So this time we're going to be looking at the piecewise functions and then we're going to be writing the overall equation that goes with it. So the first thing it says vocabulary, and then it says slope-intercept form and point-slope form. We are mainly going to focus on the y-intercept, so y equals mx plus b. And we've talked about this one quite a bit, where the slope is m, and that is our rise over our run. Okay, so hopefully we're getting pretty comfortable with that at this point. And then b is the y-intercept. And for this lesson, we're just not going to worry about the point-slope form. Not something that we need to do it right now. So let's move on to example 1. Just like with the other thing, let's divide it up into two halves, just because there's two separate equations that we're going to be writing here. So the first thing that I like to identify is, what is my boundary point? What is the value for x that is going to be like our inequality number? In this case, since it's passing through the open circle and the closed circle right there, that is where x equals -1. So that's what we're going to compare on both sides. It's going to be x compared to -1 on the left and x compared to -1 on the right. So if we're looking at this first line right here, notice it has a closed circle. And whenever we had the closed circle, that's when something is equal to it. And all those values are going to the left. So if they're to the left of -1, that means they're smaller than -1 because they keep getting smaller, -2, -3, and so forth. So all of those values are less than or equal to -1. Okay, now we're going to look at our other line, which is this one right here. And as you probably already guessed, all of these values are going to be greater than, but not with the equal sign because it's an open circle that starts that. All right, next thing is we need to figure out the equation for each of these. So we are looking for the slope and the y-intercept for each one. So I'm just going to go ahead and erase this here. So let's start on the left side. It looks like our slope, if we count this point here, we go up 1 over 1, 2, 3. So that means our m, this is our slope, is up 1 over 3. It's positive, so it's 1/3. Now the b value is a little bit trickier to find. The b value, we would have to continue this line, because remember it's the y-intercept, so it's going to be somewhere along the line or the y-axis. We don't know specifically what it is, but we can solve for it. So far we know y equals 1/3 x, because mx, plus we don't know what b is. But what we're going to do to find that is we're going to take a point that we know, such as -1, -1, and then we're going to plug that in for x and y. And then we're just going to solve. Okay, so -1 equals 1/3 times -1 plus b. Got to make sure I have enough room to write here. -1 equals -1/3 plus b. So when we add a third to both sides, add a third, we get b equals -2/3. So that's actually enough to write out the equation. And I'm going to just write it off on the left side here since I'm running out of room. It's going to be y equals, we know the slope was 1/3 x, and then the y-intercept was -2/3. You're going to have to be comfortable working with fractions in these. So if you're struggling or if you have any questions on how I got that, please make sure that you're reaching out. The other side is going to be a little bit easier. Let me clean up some of this work here. We're just going to get rid of that dotted line since we already know what that was representing. On the other side, we want everything greater than -1. So now we are looking at the other slope. So let's start with what is m. If I start with my open circle and I go to the next point, this is super nice because it's just over 1, down 1. So it's a slope of -1. And then the y-intercept, the b value, we can actually see because it crosses. It's positive 1. So this one's way easier because now we know the m and the b, so it's y equals negative x, because it's negative 1, plus 1. And there's our equation. So now all we have to do is write it as a final answer in the proper form. So we do f of x, which is the same as y. There's two equations here. So for the top one, we will do the 1/3 x minus 2/3. And then what we do is just put a little comma. And that's if x is less than or equal to negative 1. And then down below, this is negative x plus 1, where x is greater than negative 1. And there's our answer right there. So if you understand how to graph it and you understand how to solve for m and b, it's not too bad. And then you just got to put it in the proper form. So let's continue on here. Let's look at this next one. So I'm going to go ahead and split this in half here. All right, so it looks like this time our x value is going through x equals positive 1. So on the left side, this one right here, that's going to the left, so it's less than and positive 1. This one doesn't have the equal sign because it's an open circle, which means the other side is x greater than or equal to 1. So let's go ahead, let's look at that left side equation. The slope, m equals, so if we were to pick another point here, let's pick this one right here. We go up 1 over 1. This is a positive slope, even though the arrow is pointing down. If you think about it, if you read it from left to right, it's still going up. So we have a positive slope of 1, a b value of 1, 2, 3, 4 down, so that's negative 4. So y equals 1x, or x, minus 4. So that's half of our answer. The other side, x greater than or equal to 1. Let's go ahead and find the slope. So we go up 1, 2, 3, and then over 1. So that's a slope of positive 3. And then a b value. This time, what we normally would do is plug in y equals mx and then solve for b. But if you follow the pattern, so let's say we go backwards, so we go down 1, 2, 3, back 1, we reach it right at 0. So this one you don't actually have to solve for, you can just move the pattern back. And then we get y equals 3x. And now we just have to plug this into our f of x to get our final answer. So f of x equals, we split it up. Top one is going to be x minus 4 for all values x less than 1. And then 3x for all values x greater than or equal to 1. And there's our answer. So you really have to understand how slope and y-intercept work in order to do these properly. Okay, let's keep going. Got two more here. Write the equation of the piecewise function. This is the last one we're going to do. We're going to save example 4 for in class, just like I did with the other video, or the other problem in the first video for this week. It's just easier to talk about in class. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and split this up. We got our x value on this one is -1. So if we pick this one going to the left, that is x less than -1, and the other side is x greater than or equal to positive, or -1, excuse me, because that's the closed circle. Okay, looking at the left line, we have our m. Let's find another nice point right here. So we count up 1, 2, 3, and then go over 2. So it's a rise of 3 and a run of 2. It's positive, because technically we would go up. And then the b value on this one is a little bit trickier. we do have to solve. So if we don't know what b is, what we do is y equals, we know 3/2 x so far, and then plus b. So we need to pick a point that we could plug into this equation to solve for b. A nice point on this one would actually be -3, 0. So we get 0 equals 3/2 times -3. This is my x and y that I'm plugging in for. And then I'm adding b. So 0 equals, when I multiply those, I get -9/2 or -4.5. That might just be a little bit easier for this one. Plus b. And then I just add 4.5 to both sides. And we get b equals positive 4.5 or 4.5 or 9/2 if you kept it as a fraction. So the final equation on the left side is y equals 3/2 x plus 4.5 or 9/2. Either one would work. Now the right side, if you look, this is just a perfectly flat line. So that's really nice. Since it's a flat line, it's going to be a y equals equation. And all that we need to figure out is what is the numerical value that it goes through. And that's at -1. So y equals -1 is going to be the equation on the other side. So we get f of x equals, the top equation is don't need to write the y equals, 3/2 x plus 4.5 for all values of x less than -1. And then the other one is, we just write the number -1 because it's f of x equals -1. And that's for all values greater than or equal to -1. Okay. And that is our final answer. So I just want to preface that this next one here, number 3, this is a 3-part equation. And the middle, this line right here, is kind of tricky to write. So I just would rather talk about this problem in person. So you just have to do problems 1, 2, and 3 on your own. Make sure that you have the rest of the notes plus those problems done, and you can submit it for Unit 1, Section 4.